Rain poured down as Miles Carter, a black CEO, stood outside his Memphis coffee shop, watching through the window. Inside, two employees, Cody and Riley, laughed while mocking a disabled black man in a wheelchair, Andre Foster, who struggled to carry his order. Miles pulled out his phone, recording quietly, but when he stepped inside, Cody sneered, mistaking him for a janitor. If they only knew who I was, Miles thought, his fists tightening. How did it come to this? Let's go back 24 hours. Before we start, where are you watching from? If you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe for more stories like this. 24 hours earlier, Miles Carter sat in his sleek minimalist office, the skyline of Memphis stretching behind him through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 38, Miles was the embodiment of success, a self-made CEO who had built Grindhouse, coffee from a single corner cafe into one of the fastest-growing coffee chains in the Southeast. His business wasn't just about profit, it was about people. From day one, he had vowed to create a company where everyone, regardless of race, ability, or background, felt valued and respected. But lately, something had been gnawing at him. His assistant, Jasmine, knocked lightly before entering, holding a manila folder. "More complaints," she said, her tone tight with frustration. "All from the same Memphis location. Customers of color being treated poorly, disabled customers ignored, and look at this." She pulled out a handwritten letter. "It's from Tasha Reynolds, the barista who quit last month." Miles frowned, taking the letter. He remembered Tasha, a hard-working, sharp-minded young black woman who had once impressed him during a leadership workshop. She'd been on track for promotion before suddenly resigning without explanation. Now, her words leapt off the page. "Mr. Carter, I loved working for Grindhouse because of what it stood for. But at the Union Avenue store, those values don't exist. People like me get passed over. Customers who don't fit the image get mocked, mistreated, or outright ignored." I spoke up. The manager, Becky, said I was overreacting. Cody and Riley made my life hell after that. I couldn't stay, but someone has to do something. Please don't let this place ruin everything you built. Miles set the letter down slowly, his jaw tightening. This wasn't the first complaint. There had been whispers for months, subtle. Comments in customer feedback forms, cryptic remarks from lower-level managers. He had brushed them aside, trusting his regional supervisors to handle things. Clearly, he'd been wrong. Jasmine crossed her arms. "I already flagged HR, but you know how it goes. If there's no hard evidence, it's just one word against another. And Becky, she's tight with Derek Mathers, the district supervisor. They'll cover for each other like always." Miles's lips pressed into a thin line. He hated office politics, but he hated injustice more. "Enough," he muttered. "If the system won't expose the problem, I will." Jasmine blinked. "You're not thinking of—" "I am," Miles interrupted, already standing. "Cancel my afternoon meetings. I'm going undercover." An hour later, Miles stood in front of his mirror at home, stripping away every sign of his corporate status. He traded his tailored suit for worn jeans, a faded hoodie, and an old Memphis Grizzlies cap pulled low. His Rolex went into a drawer, replaced by a cheap digital watch. To anyone passing by, he'd look like just another guy grabbing coffee. After work, he stared at his reflection, the weight of leadership replaced by something sharper, more personal. This wasn't just about business. It was about integrity, about protecting the community he had promised to uplift. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, Miles was parked down the street from the Grindhouse on Union Avenue. The neon sign flickered faintly, casting a dull glow onto the sidewalk. He took a deep breath. Time to see the truth for myself. The Grindhouse on Union Avenue looked like any other location in Miles Carter's coffee empire. Warm lighting, modern decor, and the faint hum of jazz playing softly through overhead speakers. From the outside, it seemed like the perfect embodiment of the community-driven brand Miles had worked so hard to build. But as he stepped through the glass doors in his faded hoodie and jeans, the atmosphere shifted almost instantly. The first thing Miles noticed was the silence. Not complete silence. There was still the usual clatter of cups and grinders whirring, but the friendly greetings that typically welcomed customers were conspicuously absent. He watched as a white couple walked in behind him and were immediately met with bright smiles from the baristas behind the counter. "Good evening. What can I get started for y'all?" Cody, a tall blonde man with an easy swagger, leaned casually on the counter, flashing them a charming grin. Miles stepped forward, expecting the same courtesy. It didn't come. Cody's smile faded the moment his eyes landed on Miles. His gaze flicked from the worn sneakers to the dark skin peeking out from beneath the hoodie. Instead of a greeting, there was an exaggerated sigh, like Miles's very presence was an inconvenience. "Next," Cody muttered, barely glancing up from the register. Miles kept his tone calm. "Medium black coffee, please." Cody punched the order into the system with mechanical indifference, not bothering to confirm the order like company policy required. "That'll be $3.50. Miles pulled out a $5 bill. Cody snatched it without a word and slapped the change onto the counter rather than handing it back. As Miles stepped aside to wait, he overheard Riley, the other barista, snicker. "Man, they all order the same thing. Coffee, no cream, no sugar, like they're trying to prove something." Cody chuckled. "Nah, it's 'cause they can't afford anything else. You know the type." Miles's jaw tightened, but he didn't say a word. He was here to observe, to understand the full scope of the problem. Confrontation would only tip his hand too soon, but it didn't stop there. A middle-aged white man in a tailored suit strolled up next to him, phone pressed to his ear. Without waiting in line, he waved Riley down. "Hey, I'm in a rush. Can you get my usual?" Riley didn't hesitate. "Of course, Mr. Calloway, one caramel macchiato coming right up." Miles frowned. "Isn't the line back there?" he asked, motioning to the 3 other customers waiting patiently behind him. Riley shrugged without looking at him. "Regulars get priority." "Priority?" Miles echoed, incredulous. "That's not company policy." Cody, overhearing, smirked. "Oh, so now you're an expert on company policy?" His eyes gleamed with thinly veiled disdain. "Maybe." Worry less about policy and more about not holding up the line. Miles clenched his fists in his pockets, forcing himself to stay composed. It wasn't just about him. This was about every customer who walked through these doors and faced this kind of treatment. The final straw came moments later. An elderly black woman, her hair tucked under a colorful headscarf, stepped up to the counter. Her hands trembled slightly as she counted out coins from a worn coin purse. "Sorry, ma'am," Cody drawled, loud enough for the entire cafe to hear. "We don't accept loose change after 5 p.m. policy." The woman blinked, clearly embarrassed. I didn't know that. It's all I've got for a small coffee." Riley leaned in with a grin. "Maybe try the place down the street. They're more flexible." Miles's stomach churned with anger. There was no such policy. This wasn't just bad customer service. It was targeted humiliation. What would you do in Miles's shoes? Comment number 1 if you believe he should. Speak up right now or stay quiet and gather more evidence. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you think this kind of discrimination has no place anywhere. But the real question is, how deep does this toxic culture run? And can one man truly change it? Miles Carter stood near the corner of the cafe, sipping the bitter black coffee Cody had grudgingly served him. The warmth did nothing to ease the chill crawling up his spine. The way the employees dismissed customers who didn't fit the image wasn't just unprofessional. It was calculated, habitual, and ugly. This wasn't the inclusive environment he had built. It was something else entirely. He watched quietly, noting every slight, every sneer. It didn't take long for the next target to appear. The door chimed and Andre Foster rolled in, maneuvering his wheelchair with practiced ease. Miles recognized him instantly. Andre was a regular customer at grindhouse locations around Memphis. A retired teacher, soft-spoken and kind, always quick with a smile despite the challenges life had thrown his way. But the moment Andre entered, the atmosphere shifted. Cody spotted him first, his lips curling into a cruel grin. He elbowed Riley. "Heads up, it's Wheelie again," Riley snorted. "Man, don't he get tired of this place? What's he even do all day, just rolling around collecting checks?" Miles's grip tightened on his coffee cup. He forced himself to stay silent, to watch. This was the kind of behavior he needed. To expose, not just confront. Andre approached the counter, smiling politely. "Evening, can I get a large hazelnut latte, please?" Cody leaned over the register, his tone dripping with fake enthusiasm. "Sure thing, boss." "You want us to pour it into a sippy cup so you don't spill it on those fancy wheels?" Riley burst out laughing, slapping the counter for emphasis. Andre's smile faltered, but he didn't rise to the bait. "Just the latte, thanks." Cody shrugged, punching the order into the register with deliberate slowness. The line behind Andre grew, but neither barista seemed to care. Instead, they continued their whispered jokes, loud enough for anyone nearby to catch fragments. "Bet he takes 20 minutes just to get back to his car. Think he'll ask for help again?" "'Cause I'm fresh out of pity today." Miles's heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to step in, to shout, to remind them who he was and what this company stood for. But he held back. A public confrontation wouldn't solve the deeper problem. He needed undeniable proof, something that couldn't be brushed off as misunderstanding or just joking around. Andre paid and rolled to the pickup counter, his expression carefully neutral. He'd been through this before, Miles realized. This wasn't new, this was routine. The coffee came, but not without one final insult. Riley placed the cup near the edge of the counter, just out of Andre's reach. "There you go," Riley said, with a mockingly sweet smile. "Hope you got long arms, bud." Andre's jaw tightened. Slowly, methodically, he maneuvered his chair closer and stretched to grab the cup. His fingers brushed the edge, and Riley's hand accidentally bumped the cup, knocking it over. Hot coffee splashed across the counter and dripped onto Andre's lap. "Oops," Riley drawled, feigning surprise. "Guess you weren't quick enough." The cafe went silent. Andre froze, the hot liquid soaking into his jeans. For a moment it looked like he might say something, but instead he exhaled quietly, pulled a napkin from the dispenser, and began. Wiping his legs, Miles had seen enough. He stepped forward, voice calm but cold. "Clean that up now." Cody blinked, caught off guard. "What's it to you, man?" Miles didn't flinch. "I said clean it up." Riley scoffed. "Chill out, dude. It's not like it burned him. He's fine." Andre met Miles's eyes, a silent plea for peace. "Don't make it worse," the look said. But for Miles, silence wasn't an option anymore. He'd come here to understand the problem. Now he understood it all too well. He stepped back, pulled out his phone, and snapped a photo of the mess on the counter. Cody's expression darkened. "What the hell you doing? You can't take pictures in here." Miles smiled coldly. "Actually, I can, and I will. Because this," he gestured to the spilled coffee, to Andre's soaked lap, to the smirking employees. "This ends today." The baristas exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the shift in power, but not yet understanding its full weight. Andre, still wiping his legs, looked up at Miles. "It's not worth it," he murmured. "It never is." Miles's jaw tightened. Maybe it wasn't before, but it is now. He turned on his heel and walked out, the bell above the door jingling in his wake. Outside, standing in the cool evening air, Miles glanced at the photo. On his phone, the damning image of cruelty and indifference. This wasn't just about Grindhouse anymore, this was about principle, about justice, and he was done watching from the sidelines. Miles Carter didn't sleep that night. The image of Andre Foster wiping hot coffee off his lap, while Cody and Riley laughed, haunted him. The photo he'd taken sat glaringly on his phone screen, a stark reminder of everything his company was not supposed to be. He scrolled through the Grindhouse website, reading the mission statement he had written himself years ago. A space for everyone, built on respect, community, and integrity. What a joke, he thought bitterly. By sunrise, Miles had made up his mind. Enough observation, enough patience, it was time to confront the problem head-on. He walked into the Union Avenue store just after the morning rush, wearing the same worn hoodie and jeans from the night before. This time, he wasn't just an observer, he was a CEO on a mission. Cody was at the counter, chatting with Riley while wiping down the espresso machine. Both froze when they saw him. "Back already?" Cody sneered. "What didn't get enough pity tips yesterday?" Miles didn't react. He simply pulled out his phone. the photo of the spilled coffee and Andre's soaked lap already queued up. "We need to talk," Miles said, his voice low but firm. "Now." Riley glanced around the cafe, noticing a few customers lingering. At tables, he shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Talk about what? Some clumsy dude spilling his drink? Not our problem." Miles didn't blink. "It is your problem. And it's about to get a whole lot bigger if you don't take this seriously." Cody stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "Look, man, I don't know who you think you are, but you're barking up the wrong tree. Customers spill drinks all the time. You act like it's some civil rights violation." Miles smiled coldly and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a sleek black wallet, flipped it open, and revealed his Grindhouse corporate ID. The color drained from Cody's face. "Who I think I am," Miles said, voice calm but cutting. "I'm the man who signs your paycheck. And as of right now, that paycheck's looking real shaky." Riley's mouth fell open. "Wait, you're the CEO?" Bingo. The cafe seemed to freeze. A couple of customers glanced over, sensing the tension. Cody stammered, his cocky facade cracking. "Hold on, man," Cody sputtered. "This is all a misunderstanding. That guy, the one in the wheelchair, he's a regular. We joke around with him all the time. He gets it, you know." Miles's eyes narrowed. "Funny. Andre didn't seem to be laughing when you dumped hot coffee on him. Neither did the black woman you refused to serve last week, or the Hispanic family you overcharged the week before that." Riley paled. "How do you—" "I've been watching," Miles interrupted. "Listening, documenting. And now, I'm here to make it right." For a brief moment, it seemed like the conversation was over. Cody shrank back, realizing the weight of what he was up against. Riley muttered something under his breath and turned away. But then, the store manager, Becky, appeared from the back. A stout woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an even sharper tongue, Becky had built a reputation for running a tight ship. "What's going on here?" Becky snapped, eyeing Miles suspiciously. Cody recovered quickly, the familiar arrogance returning to his posture. "This guy's trying to pull rank, Becky. Says he's the CEO or something." Becky's gaze flicked to Miles's ID, her lips curled into a knowing smirk. Well, well," she drawled, crossing her arms. "Mr. Big Shot himself. Guess you finally crawled out of your fancy office to see how the real world works." Miles's patience snapped. "This is the real world, Becky. A world where your employees mock disabled customers, refuse service based on race, and turn my company into a breeding ground for hate. And you let it happen." Becky didn't flinch. "You got proof of that, Mr. Carter, because last I checked, it's your word against ours. And I've got a spotless employee record backing me up." Miles blinked. Spotless? That didn't make sense. He'd seen complaints, multiple ones, filed against this very store. Becky caught his confusion and smiled slyly. "Oh, those little complaints. Derek Mathers, your district supervisor, he makes sure they don't go anywhere. You know, to protect the brand." The realization hit Miles like a punch to the gut. His own system, the one he'd built to safeguard fairness, had been corrupted from within. "You're telling me," Miles said slowly, "that Derek's been covering for you?" Becky shrugged. "It's not covering, it's smart business. This location runs like clockwork, no disruptions, no drama. Customers like things smooth, not messy with social issues. Derek gets that. You should too." Cody, emboldened by Becky's presence, grinned. "So, boss man, what's it going to be? Fire us for what? Some hearsay and a blurry picture?" Miles's hands clenched at his sides. He had walked in ready to clean house. But now he saw the bigger picture. This wasn't just about two cruel baristas. It was about an entire system that valued silence over accountability. For the first time that morning, Miles hesitated. Becky leaned in, voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Here's some free business advice, Mr. Carter. Pick your battles, because if you take this one on, you'll lose." Miles stared at her, heart pounding. She was wrong. He couldn't lose, not if he exposed everything. But how deep did the corruption go? How many more were involved? What would you do if you were in Miles's shoes? Comment number 1. If you think he should fight the system head on, no matter the risk. Or should he regroup, gather more evidence and strike when he's absolutely sure. Like, subscribe and share if you believe no one should get away with discrimination, ever. But the real question is, if the system itself is corrupt, how do you destroy it without losing everything you've built? Miles Carter walked out of the Union Avenue grindhouse with a hollow feeling in his chest. The sun had risen high, casting sharp shadows across the pavement, but the warmth did nothing to ease the cold realization settling over him. This wasn't just about two employees with bad attitudes. It was deeper, systemic, corrosive, and the rot had spread further than he'd imagined. Back at headquarters, Miles shut his office door and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. Jasmine, his assistant, glanced up from her desk. One look at his face and she knew. "It's worse than we thought, isn't it?" she asked quietly. Miles nodded, jaw tightening. "Much worse. Becky, Cody, Riley, they're just the tip of the iceberg. Derek Mathers has been burying complaints to protect the brand." He practically spat the words. "The system we built to promote fairness, it's been weaponized to silence victims." Jasmine's eyes widened. "Derek? But he's been with the company for years. He's always talking about upholding company values." "Talk is cheap," Miles muttered, sinking into his chair. He opened his laptop and pulled up the internal complaint system. "Let's see just how many voices Derek tried to erase." They worked in silence, combing through digital records. At first glance, everything seemed clean, too clean. But Miles knew how systems worked. When people wanted to hide something, they didn't delete it. They buried it under layers of bureaucracy. Finally, Jasmine leaned over his shoulder, pointing at a pattern. "Look here. Every complaint flagged as unsubstantiated came from the Union Avenue store or one of Derek's other districts. Same wording, same resolution. No actionable evidence found, case closed. It's copy-pasted." Miles's fingers tightened around the mouse. "How many?" 37 complaints in the past 6 months, Jasmine whispered. "All from minority employees or customers, all dismissed." The weight of betrayal settled deeper. Derek Mathers, someone Miles had trusted, promoted, even mentored, had turned the company's core values into nothing more than a PR facade. Miles closed his eyes, fighting the urge to slam his fist against the desk. He'd built Grindhouse to be different, a safe space, and now it was no better than the corporate giants he'd once criticized. "Pull up the personnel files," Miles said, voice tight. "I want to know who else is involved. If Derek's covering for Becky, he's not working alone." Jasmine nodded, fingers flying across the keyboard. Within minutes, they had a web of connections mapped out. Cody was Becky's nephew. Riley was dating another manager at a nearby store, also under Derek's district. Promotions had flowed through this circle like clockwork, while minority employees were consistently passed over or pushed out. And then there was Tasha Reynolds. Miles's breath caught when he saw her name. She hadn't just quit. Her resignation had been filed alongside a complaint of racial discrimination, one that Derek had personally marked as resolved. No follow-up, no investigation. Jasmine glanced at him. "Do we reach out?" Miles didn't hesitate. "Now." 15 minutes later, Tasha sat across from him in the office conference room, arms crossed tightly over her chest. She looked wary, guarded. The fire he remembered from her training days dimmed, but not extinguished. "I didn't expect to hear from you," she said, her voice flat. "Figured corporate wrote me off just like they did my complaint." Miles leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Tasha, I had no idea. If I had known—" "But you didn't, did you?" she interrupted, eyes sharp. "Because people like Derek make sure the truth never reaches the top. It's easier to protect profits than people." Miles swallowed the bitter truth. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." And she did. Tasha had been a rising star, exactly the kind of employee Miles envisioned leading his stores one day. But when she spoke up about Cody's treatment of black customers, the backlash was swift. Shifts were cut. Performance reviews suddenly dipped without explanation. Becky, ever the opportunist, painted her as difficult and disruptive. And Derek? He nodded along, quietly ensuring every door to advancement slammed shut. "I loved working for Grindhouse," Tasha finished, voice tight with emotion. "But love doesn't pay rent. When they made it clear I'd never move up, I left, but I didn't go quietly. I filed that complaint, hoping someone like you would see it. Miles felt the shame like a punch to the gut. And Derek made sure I never did, Tasha nodded. Now you know. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Miles met her gaze, determination hardening his features. Burn it down, every last corrupt piece of it. But deep down, he knew this fight was bigger than one store, one district, even one company. This was about systemic abuse that thrived in silence and shadows. He stood, extending his hand. Will you help me? Tasha hesitated for only a moment before clasping his hand firmly. Let's end this. As she left the office, Miles turned back to Jasmine. Get legal on the phone. I want every complaint Derek ever touched pulled and reviewed. And contact the regional managers. We're holding an emergency meeting. Jasmine nodded, already dialing. What's the endgame here, Miles? He stared out the window, the Memphis skyline sharp against the morning sun. We don't just fire Derek. We expose the system that let him thrive. Because now, it wasn't just about protecting Grindhouse's reputation, it was about reclaiming its soul. Miles Carter wasn't done. Now that he knew Derek Mathers had been covering up systemic racism and discrimination at Grindhouse, he had to dig deeper. Firing Derek outright would be too easy. It wouldn't change the culture that allowed this to happen. If he wanted real change, he needed undeniable proof that the corruption ran deeper than just one bad executive. So for the second time, he went undercover. This time, he ditched the hoodie and jeans and dressed as a maintenance worker, an old uniform from his early days when he first opened the company. A janitor's cart, a cap pulled low and a fake name tag completed the disguise. If the employees at the Union Avenue location had dismissed him as just another customer before, they wouldn't even see him now. And that's exactly what happened, as a Mady. Soon as he stepped into the store pushing the janitor's cart, Cody and Riley barely acknowledged him. Becky, the manager, glanced at him once before muttering, "Just stay out of the way." She had no idea she was speaking to her boss. Miles kept his head down, moving slowly, cleaning tables near the counter, staying close enough to listen. It didn't take long for the cruelty to begin. A Hispanic family walked in, parents with 2 young children speaking in Spanish as they browsed the menu. The father stepped forward, ordering in English with a slight accent. Cody's smirk was instant. "Yeah, I'm gonna need you to speak up, buddy." The father furrowed his brow. I just said 2 caramel macchiatos and 2 hot chocolates. Please." Cody leaned in. "You sure you can afford that? 'Cause we don't do free samples." Miles's blood boiled, but he forced himself to stay still, gripping the cleaning cloth in his hands. The mother reached for her purse. "We can pay." Riley snickered. "Hey man, maybe they got pesos. You think we take pesos?" Cody laughed, shaking his head. Nah, let's be fair. Maybe they're paying with hard work." He mimed wiping a counter with an exaggerated motion. "Maybe we should just let him mop the floors instead." The mother's face flushed red as she reached for her husband's arm, whispering something in Spanish. The father stood still, fists clenched, jaw tight. Miles had seen enough. Turned, making his way toward the storage room, pulling out his phone. He hit record, whispering into the camera. Day 2 of this investigation. More blatant racism, this time targeting a Hispanic family. Employees mocking their accents, questioning if they can afford drinks. This isn't just one incident, it's a pattern. He had just tucked his phone back into his pocket when a voice called out, "Hey, janitor." Miles turned to see Cody grinning at him. "You done cleaning yet? 'Cause I think we got another mess coming in." He nodded toward the entrance. Miles turned, and his stomach dropped. Andre Foster was back, the retired teacher in his wheelchair, rolling through the door like he hadn't been humiliated just 24 hours ago. Cody nudged Riley. "Oh, look who decided to return for round 2. Riley smirked. "Think he wants another coffee bath?" Andre didn't hesitate as he wheeled up to the counter. "I'll have a medium hazelnut latte," he said, voice steady. Cody leaned against the register. "I don't know, man. You sure you can handle it?" Andre didn't react. He just pulled out his card and placed it on the counter. Cody didn't take it. Instead, he turned to Riley. "Hey, remember that new policy Becky mentioned? The one about certain customers needing to provide proof of ID before ordering? Riley caught on instantly. Oh yeah, that's right. Company policy, man. We need an ID. Andre frowned. What? I've never needed an ID to buy coffee. Well, Cody said, shrugging, things change. Miles took a slow breath, his hands tightening into fists. This wasn't just about making fun of someone anymore. This was about denying service, humiliating a man for no reason other than the fact that they could. Andre, to his credit, didn't flinch. He simply shook his head, pulled his wallet from his pocket, and handed over his driver's license. Cody made a show of examining it. He held it up to the light, turned it over, squinted at it. Yeah, I don't know, he finally said. This looks kind of fake, man. What do you think, Riley? Riley leaned in, nodding solemnly. Yeah, definitely fake. No way a guy like him is driving anywhere, Andre exhaled sharply. Are you serious? Cody grinned. Dead serious. Miles had had enough. He strode forward, no longer playing the role of janitor. You're going to serve him, Miles said, voice low and firm. Right now. Cody turned, confused, then smirked. Oh, the janitor's got opinions now? Becky stepped out from the back, frowning. What's the problem? Miles ignored her. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone and hit play. The recording of Cody and Riley mocking the Hispanic family filled the air, every slur, every insult, crystal clear. The cafe went silent. Customers turned. Heads snapped toward the counter. Cody's face drained of color. Riley took a step back. Becky's expression barely flickered. You can't record employees without permission, she said stiffly. Miles smiled coldly. You'd be right if I were just another customer. He pulled off his janitor's cap, and Becky's face finally changed, because she recognized him. Miles Carter, he said, stepping forward. CEO of this company. The blood drained from Becky's face. Cody swallowed hard. Riley let out a nervous laugh. Andre simply watched, calm and unreadable. For the first time, the power had shifted. Miles folded his arms. Now let's talk about how this location operates. What would you have done in Miles's position? Comment number 1 if you think exposing them like this was the right move, or do you think he should have handled it differently? Like, subscribe and share if you believe racism in businesses should never be ignored. But the real question is, now that he's revealed himself, how will they strike back? The silence inside the grindhouse was suffocating. Becky stood frozen, her face pale as she processed the bomb Miles had just dropped. Cody and Riley exchanged panicked glances, the arrogance drained from their expressions. Customers watched, with wide eyes, some quietly pulling out their phones to record the unfolding scene. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Becky found her voice, sharp and defensive. I don't care who you are, she snapped, stepping forward. You can't just barge in here recording people and throwing around accusations. This store runs fine without corporate breathing down our necks. Miles's gaze didn't waver. Fine? Is that what you call this? Mocking customers, denying service based on race and disability, falsifying IDs to avoid serving someone in a wheelchair. Becky's jaw clenched. You're twisting things. They were just joking around. If customers are so sensitive, maybe they shouldn't come here. And that, Miles said quietly, is exactly why this ends now. He stepped aside, revealing the phone still recording, the screen displaying a live video call with Jasmine. From corporate headquarters. Jasmine, Miles said, voice steady. You got all that? Every word, Jasmine replied, her expression grim. I'm drafting the suspension notices now, effective immediately. Becky's face twisted in fury. You think you can walk in here and ruin people's lives over a couple of jokes? You're pathetic. Miles didn't flinch. I'm not ruining lives. I'm protecting the people you've been hurting for months, years maybe. This store is closed for investigation. Get your things and leave. Cody sputtered. You can't just shut us down. I can, Miles said, holding up his phone to show the official order being sent to the district office. And I just did, Riley muttered under his breath, shaking his head in disbelief. Becky, ever defiant, slammed her apron onto the counter. You're gonna regret this, she hissed, jabbing a finger at Miles. You think you're untouchable, but you're not. You just made a lot of enemies. With that, she stormed out, Cody and Riley trailing behind her. The cafe was eerily quiet as the doors swung shut behind them. Andre, still seated by the counter, glanced at Miles. "You sure you're ready for what comes next?" Miles nodded, but deep down he couldn't ignore the gnawing unease in his gut. He'd won this battle, but Becky's words lingered like smoke in the air. "You just made a lot of enemies." He didn't have to wait long to find out what she meant. That night, as Miles drove home, headlights appeared in his rearview mirror. Bright, aggressive, tailing him too closely. He switched lanes, the car followed, he frowned, muscles tensing. Coincidence? The other driver sped up, swerving dangerously close to his bumper. Definitely not a coincidence. Miles's heart pounded. He wasn't about to lead them to his house. Thinking fast, he veered into a crowded gas station lot, pulling up beside the pumps. The pursuing car hesitated, then sped off into the night. Breathing hard, Miles sat still for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Back off, or next time we don't miss." Miles stared at the screen, cold dread settling in his chest. This wasn't just about a toxic store culture anymore. He'd stirred something deeper, something uglier. And whoever was behind it wasn't going to let him dismantle their power without a fight. By the time he got home, exhaustion weighed heavily on him, but sleep didn't come easily. His mind raced, replaying the day's events, calculating the risks. The next morning it got worse. Miles arrived at headquarters to find Jasmine already waiting, her face tight with worry. "Your car," she said, pointing to the garage. He hurried over and stopped cold. The side of his SUV had been spray-painted in bold red letters, "Rat." Nearby, one of the tires was slashed, the rubber sagging against the pavement. Miles exhaled slowly, the anger burning hotter than the fear. "This is retaliation," Jasmine said, voice trembling. "We need to call the police." Miles shook his head. "Cops won't do much, not unless we tie this to something bigger." He turned to Jasmine, jaw set. "Get Tasha on the phone. I need every file, every complaint Derek ever covered up. If they want a war, they've got one." But deep down, Miles knew this fight was far from over. He had exposed the corruption at one location, but now the system was fighting back. And the real question was, how far were they willing to go to protect their power? Miles Carter sat in his office, staring at the threatening text still glowing on his phone screen. "Back off, or next time we don't miss." It wasn't just a warning. It was a declaration of war. Becky's words echoed in his head. "You just made a lot of enemies." He had exposed the toxic culture at the Union Avenue grindhouse, but that was just one location. The retaliation, his vandalized car, the shadowy tail that nearly ran him off the road, proved the problem was much bigger. Derek Mathers, the district supervisor, had clearly built more than just a network of complicit managers. He'd built protection. Miles couldn't take them down with words alone. He needed irrefutable proof, proof that couldn't be brushed aside as misunderstandings or overreactions. That's when an idea struck him. He picked up the phone and called Andre Foster, the disabled teacher who had been humiliated by Cody and Riley. "Andre," Miles said, skipping pleasantries, "how far are you willing to go to make sure this never happens to anyone else?" Andre didn't hesitate. "Whatever it takes." 2 days later, the plan was in motion. Andre agreed to return to the Union Avenue store, wearing a discreet body camera provided by Miles's legal team. The goal was simple: document the discrimination in real time, from start to finish. Jasmine had ensured the cafe reopened under temporary management while the investigation was pending, but Cody and Riley, thanks to Becky pulling strings with Derek, were still technically employed, though on probation. "Probation," Miles muttered bitterly, "for harassment and racism. Unbelievable." Andre rolled into the cafe during the midday rush, his camera streaming live to a secure feed. Miles, Jasmine, and Tasha watched from a laptop in Miles's office, tension thick in the air. The moment Andre approached the counter, Cody's face twisted into a sneer. "Back already?" Cody drawled, folding his arms. "Thought you'd learned your lesson." Andre's voice remained steady. "Medium hazelnut latte, please." Riley leaned on the counter, fake sympathy dripping from his tone. "Oh, look at him. Real brave." "Huh? Bet he's recording us again." "What, trying to get another pity payday?" Cody laughed. Yeah, go ahead, roll in here like you own the place. We ain't scared of no lawsuit. Andre didn't react, just held out his card. That's when Cody took it further. Nah, he said, slapping the card away. It hit the floor, sliding under the counter. New policy. We don't serve folks who make trouble for the company. Liability, you know? Riley chimed in. Yeah, company's got to protect itself. Can't have freeloaders ruining the vibe. Miles watched the live stream, fury burning through his chest. This was beyond unprofessional. It was vindictive, but Andre stayed calm. Are you denying me service based on my disability? Andre asked, voice cool and precise. Cody grinned. Nope. Denying you service for being a pain in the ass. That's not illegal, right? Riley chuckled. Should be. That was it. Miles slammed his laptop shut. Time's up, he growled. He grabbed his phone and dialed the legal team. Send the shutdown order, now. Within minutes, Miles was back at the Union Avenue store, striding through the door with the confidence of a man who'd had enough. Cody's face fell the moment he saw him. You're done, Miles said, voice cold. Both of you, out now. Becky appeared from the back, arms crossed, already ready to fight. You can't fire them without due process, she snapped. Union rules. Miles didn't blink. Union rules. Funny, because I just spoke with HR. They've already processed the termination paperwork. Effective immediately. If you don't leave willingly, security will escort you out. Cody sputtered. You can't do this. Watch me, Miles shot back. Andre, still filming, turned the camera toward Becky. And you, Miles continued, pointing at her. Your protection's gone. Derek's under internal investigation. Every complaint you covered up is being reopened. This store is officially closed until further notice. Becky's face went from red to pale. You think you're some kind of hero, she hissed. You're destroying people's livelihoods over jokes. Miles stepped closer, voice low and firm. These jokes ruined careers, shattered trust, drove good employees out. I didn't destroy livelihoods, you did. I'm just cleaning up the mess. For a moment, it seemed like Miles had won. Becky, Cody, and Riley stood there, silent and defeated. Customers whispered, some filming on their phones. Andre exhaled slowly, relief softening his tense shoulders. But then Becky smiled, a cold, knowing smile. Hope you're ready for what comes next, she muttered, brushing past Miles as she walked out the door. Miles frowned. What did she mean by that? The answer came hours later. Jasmine burst into Miles's office, eyes wide with panic. Corporate just got hit with a lawsuit, she gasped. Becky, Cody, and Riley, they're suing you personally for defamation and wrongful termination. Miles froze. What? Jasmine shoved a stack of papers onto his desk. Look at this. It's coordinated. Derek's name is all over the filing. They're claiming you fired them without due cause, violated company policy, and tarnished their reputations. They're asking for 6 figures each in damages. Miles sank into his chair, disbelief crashing over him like a wave. He had done everything by the book, collected evidence, followed HR protocols. But Becky had been right about one thing. He'd made enemies. And now those enemies were using the system against him. It wasn't just a personal attack, it was a message. You can't win. What would you do if you were in Miles's position? Comment number 1. If you believe he should fight the lawsuit head-on, no matter the cost, or should he settle quietly to protect the company? Like, subscribe, and share if you think standing up to injustice is worth every risk. But here's the real question. If the system itself is weaponized against justice, how do you beat it without losing everything? Miles Carter sat in his office, the lawsuit papers spread out like a crime scene before him. Becky, Cody, Riley, they were suing him, not the company. Him. Personal liability, 6 figures each. And behind it all, Derek Mathers, the district supervisor who had quietly enabled the toxic culture for years. Jasmine stood nearby, arms crossed tightly. This isn't just a lawsuit, Miles. It's a power play. Derek's protecting his people and trying to take you down in the process. If they win, your reputation's toast. Even if they lose, the smear alone could damage Grindhouse. Miles leaned back, rubbing his temples. He'd anticipated retaliation, but this, It was calculated, ruthless, designed to bleed him dry. Not just financially, but mentally. "We fight," he said finally, "but not on their terms, on ours." Jasmine blinked. "How? It's their word against yours. Even with the footage Andre got, they'll argue it was contextual and claim wrongful termination." Miles's lips curled into a grim smile. "We don't just fight the lawsuit. We expose the system that enabled them. Publicly, loudly, and permanently." He picked up the phone and dialed Tasha Reynolds, the former Grindhouse employee whose complaint Derek had buried. "Tasha," Miles said without preamble, "are you ready to take them down?" Her answer came without hesitation. "Tell me where to start." Within hours, the plan was in motion. Jasmine compiled every complaint Derek had ever buried. Discrimination claims, reports of hostile work environments, customer mistreatment. Miles's legal team cross-referenced them with employee turnover rates, finding an undeniable pattern. Minority employees were disciplined, demoted, or quietly pushed out, while white employees, especially those in Derek's circle, were promoted, protected and emboldened. But the real bombshell came from Tasha. "I saved everything," she told Miles, dropping a flash drive onto his desk. "Emails, memos, even voicemails Derek left after I filed my complaint. He was stupid enough to leave a trail." Miles plugged in the drive, heart pounding. The evidence was damning. One email from Derek to Becky stood out. "Ignore the complaint. We can't start firing people every time someone gets their feelings hurt. Keep the undesirables in check and make sure the files stay clean." Undesirables. Miles stared at the word, anger simmering beneath his skin. Jasmine leaned over his shoulder. "This isn't just discrimination. This is corporate negligence. If this goes public—" "It will go public," Miles interrupted. "But not yet. First, we turn the heat up from the inside." He called an emergency board meeting. The Grindhouse board, a mix of investors and senior executives, gathered in the conference room, murmuring with concern. Derek sat near the end of the table, arms crossed, eyes cold and calculating. Miles stood, calm and composed. "I'm sure you've all heard about the lawsuit. Becky, Cody, Riley, they claim wrongful termination. They're demanding 6 figures each, and they've painted me as the villain." Derek smirked. "It's unfortunate, Miles, but you did act without full due process. HR hadn't completed their investigation when you pulled the trigger. That's why they have a case." Miles nodded slowly. "You're right, I acted fast, maybe too fast. But I acted based on what I saw firsthand. Abuse, discrimination, and a toxic culture. And now I know why it was allowed to fester." He pulled out the flash drive and plugged it into the conference room screen. The first email appeared, the one with the word undesirables. The room went silent. One of the board members, Karen Yu, leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "What the hell is this?" "Proof," Miles said evenly. "Proof that Derek Mathers has been covering up discrimination complaints for years. Not just ignoring them, actively burying them, protecting abusive employees and retaliating against those who spoke up. This lawsuit? It's not about wrongful termination. It's about silencing the person who finally said, 'Enough.'" Derek's face darkened. "This is ridiculous. Those emails are out of context. Anyone can cherry-pick." Miles didn't let him finish. He clicked to the next piece of evidence, a voicemail from Derek to Becky. "If Carter keeps digging, we'll bury him in paperwork. Bog him down until the board gets tired of his crusade and sidelines him. Keep the store running smooth, and no one will care what happened to some whiny customers or disgruntled employees." The room erupted into shocked murmurs. Karen Yu's face hardened. "Derek, you've been manipulating internal investigations, and now you're orchestrating a lawsuit against the CEO?" Derek stood, face flushed. "This is a witch hunt. Carter's trying to save his own skin." "Sit down," another board member snapped. "If half of this is true, you're done." But Miles wasn't finished. He turned back to the board. "This isn't just Derek's doing. It's systemic. He didn't operate in a vacuum. Becky, Cody, Riley, they thrived because they knew someone had their back. And the moment I tried to fix it, they weaponized the system against me." The board chair, Ron Whitaker, cleared his throat. "What are you proposing, Miles?" Miles's eyes were cold and steady. "Fire Derek. Terminate Becky, Cody, and Riley. With cause. Drop the lawsuit. and initiate a full third-party audit of Grindhouse's HR practices. Every complaint that was ever filed under Derek's watch gets reopened and investigated properly." The room fell silent. Finally, Karen Yu nodded. "Agreed, effective immediately." Derek paled. "You can't—" "We can," Ron Whitaker said. "And we will." Two security officers stepped into the room, as if on cue. "Mr. Mathers," Ron continued, "you're relieved of duty, pending further investigation. Please collect your things." Derek's chair scraped against the floor as he stood, seething. He pointed a trembling finger at Miles. "You think this ends with me? You've made enemies, Carter. People who don't like seeing power shift. Watch. You're back." Miles didn't blink. "I already am." As Derek was escorted out, Miles exhaled slowly. One battle won, but the war far from over. Jasmine leaned in, voice low. "You know he's right. There's more out there. People who liked the way things were." Miles nodded. "Let them come. We're ready now." Because this wasn't just about Grindhouse anymore. It was about every workplace that let discrimination slide under the guise of efficiency. And Miles Carter had just proven he wasn't backing down. For a brief moment, Miles Carter thought the storm had passed. Derek Mathers was gone, fired in disgrace. Becky, Cody, and Riley were officially blacklisted from Grindhouse, and the lawsuit against him had been dropped once the board saw the damning evidence. The toxic culture he'd uncovered was being dismantled piece by piece, but peace was short-lived. 2 days after Derek's termination, Grindhouse's social media accounts were flooded with negative reviews. Not from real customers, but from anonymous accounts posting eerily similar messages. Grindhouse fired hard-working employees because of woke politics. Boycott this company. This CEO doesn't care about small business workers. He only protects complainers who can't handle a joke. Discrimination against white employees is still discrimination. Carter's a hypocrite. Within hours, the company's Yelp rating plummeted from 4.7 stars to 2.3. Jasmine burst into Miles's office, holding her phone with shaking hands. "We've been review bombed," she said, voice tight. "It's coordinated, dozens of fake accounts all posting the same talking points." Miles frowned, scrolling through the comments. The phrasing was too precise, the timing too perfect. This wasn't organic outrage. It was a campaign. "Derek," Miles muttered. "Or someone protecting him." Jasmine nodded. "I already contacted Yelp and Google to report the fake reviews, but damage control isn't enough. We need to get ahead of this." Miles leaned back, running a hand down his face. He had expected resistance, but this was sabotage, and it didn't stop there. The next morning, his email inbox exploded with complaints. Customers claimed they were being charged double, orders were being cancelled without notice, and some even reported finding foreign objects in their drinks. Miles immediately called an internal investigation. What they found was chilling. Several Grindhouse locations, specifically the ones Derek had overseen, were still staffed by managers sympathetic to him. These managers had quietly instructed their employees to make life hell for corporate. Orders were deliberately mishandled, receipts altered, and photos of contaminated drinks were staged and leaked online. Jasmine's face was pale as she read the report. "This isn't just a backlash, it's sabotage." Miles slammed his fist on the desk. "They're trying to destroy the company from the inside." He knew what came next: accountability. The next morning, Miles held a virtual town hall with every Grindhouse employee nationwide. His face was calm, but his tone was sharp. "I know many of you have seen the negative reviews and false complaints circulating online. Let me be clear. This isn't coming from dissatisfied customers. It's a coordinated attack from people who were part of the toxic culture we're rooting out. People who think Grindhouse should be a place where racism, bullying, and abuse are acceptable." He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "If you're one of those people, if you think it's okay to harass customers, sabotage orders, or manipulate the system, there's no place for you here. I've authorized a full audit of every location. Any manager found participating in or encouraging sabotage will be terminated immediately without severance." Jasmine, standing just off camera, handed him a folder. "And for those of you who've been silent witnesses, Afraid to speak up because you thought no one would listen? We've established an anonymous reporting line, monitored by a third-party agency. Your reports will go directly to corporate, bypassing any local management. Speak up. We'll protect you. The call ended, but the fallout was immediate. Within hours, anonymous tips poured in. Employees, many who had stayed quiet out of fear of retaliation, came forward, exposing managers who had covered for Derek's circle. One message stood out. It was from an employee named Marissa, a shift supervisor, at a grindhouse location 2 states away. Mr. Carter, I didn't know who else to tell. Our district manager told us to lose minority applicants' resumes and prioritize culture fits, code for white hires. He said it came straight from the top. I didn't think he meant Derek Mathers until I saw the news about his firing. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. Please don't let this continue. Miles read the message twice, disbelief washing over him. This wasn't just about Derek. His influence had spread, further than Miles had imagined, infecting multiple districts. Jasmine leaned in, face pale. This wasn't just one bad apple. It's a network. Derek might have been the ringleader, but there are still people pulling strings. Miles nodded slowly, realization settling over him like a lead weight. We didn't just cut off the head of the snake, he muttered. We stirred the whole nest. The backlash was no longer just about protecting Derek's reputation. It was about preserving a culture that thrived on exclusion and abuse, one that saw Miles's reforms as a threat. And now they were fighting, back with everything they had. But Miles wasn't backing down. He picked up his phone and dialed Tasha. Get the legal team, he said, voice cold and sharp. We're not just fighting Grindhouse's battle anymore. We're taking this public. Every name, every incident, every system failure. If they wanted war, they had it. Because now, it wasn't just about Grindhouse's survival. It was about justice. And Miles Carter was done playing defense. Miles Carter didn't sleep that night. The anonymous tip from Marissa confirmed his worst fear. Derek Mathers hadn't been acting alone. His influence had spread like a virus, infecting multiple districts, managers, and hiring practices across the company. This wasn't just a grindhouse problem. It was systemic, deliberate, and deeply entrenched. By sunrise, Miles was back in his office, the city skyline stretching behind him as he stared at a whiteboard covered in notes, connections, and names. Jasmine stood nearby, phone in hand, reading updates from the investigation team. We've confirmed at least 9 district managers tied to Derek's circle, she said grimly. They were enforcing unspoken policies, rejecting minority applicants, covering up complaints and protecting abusive employees. Some even pushed out managers who didn't fit the culture. Miles exhaled slowly, fists clenching at his sides. How the hell did this happen under my nose? Jasmine's eyes softened. Because they knew how to hide it. They used Grindhouse's own system against itself, shuffling complaints, falsifying reports, and covering for each other. It was never about one store or one district. It was an entire network built on silent complicity. Miles nodded, jaw tightening. Then we don't just fire them, we expose them publicly, permanently. He picked up the phone and dialed Tasha Reynolds, the former employee whose complaint Derek had buried. Tasha, Miles said without preamble, are you ready to go public? Tasha's voice was steady. I've been ready since the day they pushed me out. Within hours, Miles organized a press conference, not a quiet internal announcement, but a full-blown media event. Local and national news stations received invitations. The backdrop was Grindhouse headquarters, with the company logo standing tall behind the podium. As reporters gathered, murmuring among themselves, Miles stepped up to the microphone, his face hard and unyielding. Jasmine stood to his left, Tasha to his right. Behind them, several current and former Grindhouse employees who had faced discrimination, Black, Hispanic, Asian, disabled, stood together, arms crossed, eyes fierce. Miles cleared his throat, the chatter dying instantly. Good morning, he began, voice steady but cold. My name is Miles Carter. I'm the CEO of Grindhouse Coffee, and today I'm here to tell you the truth. No spin, no corporate jargon, just facts. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. For the past several months, I've been investigating allegations of discrimination and harassment within my company. What I discovered was worse than I imagined. A network of managers and supervisors, led by former district supervisor Derek Mathers, systematically targeted employees and customers based on race, disability, and socio-economic status. Complaints were buried, promotions were denied, good people were pushed out while abusers were protected. Reporters' pens flew across notepads, cameras clicked furiously. Miles continued, voice rising. This wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, coordinated, and it thrived because silence and fear kept it alive. That ends today. He gestured to Jasmine, who pulled up a large screen beside the podium. It flickered to life, displaying emails, memos, and internal reports. This is Derek Mathers instructing managers to lose minority applicants' resumes. The screen shifted. This is an email from a district manager encouraging staff to prioritize cultural fit, code for white hires. Another slide appeared. This is a falsified HR report dismissing a discrimination claim as unsubstantiated, even though witness statements were attached. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Tasha stepped forward, voice clear and strong. I worked at Grindhouse for 3 years. I loved my job until I spoke up. I reported racism, and instead of fixing the problem, they became the problem. My hours were cut, my promotion was cancelled, and eventually, I was pushed out. Derek Mathers made sure my voice was silenced, but he didn't count on one thing. She glanced at Miles, leadership that actually cares. Miles stepped back up. I won't lie to you. This is the hardest thing I've ever faced as a CEO. It would have been easier to sweep this under the rug, quietly fire a few people, and move on. But that's not leadership. Leadership means accountability. It means owning the failures and fixing them no matter how uncomfortable it gets. He held up a thick folder. As of today, Grindhouse is reopening every single complaint filed under Derek Mathers and his network. Third-party investigators will handle each case independently. Any manager found complicit will be terminated immediately and reported to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. We're also launching a $500,000 fund to support former employees who faced retaliation, including covering legal fees for anyone who wishes to pursue further action. Reporters shouted questions, but Miles held up a hand. One more thing, he said, voice dropping. This problem isn't unique to Grindhouse. It's everywhere. Restaurants, offices, schools. Silence lets it grow. So here's my challenge. To every CEO, every business owner, every HR department, audit your systems. Look deeper. Believe the people who come forward. He leaned closer to the microphone. If you're not actively fighting discrimination, you're enabling it. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. Behind the scenes, Jasmine's phone buzzed non-stop. Messages of support, tip-offs from employees at other companies, even outreach from civil rights organizations offering partnership, but not everyone was pleased. Later that evening, as Miles sat in his office reviewing the flood of emails, Jasmine walked in, face tight. You need to see this, she said, sliding her phone across the desk. It was a video, filmed on a shaky phone camera outside Grindhouse's Union Avenue location. A man in a dark hoodie spray-painted across the storefront windows. Carter's Coffee, only for the right people. He turned to the camera, pulling down his hood. Derek Mathers. The video cut off as he walked away, flipping off the camera. Miles stared at the screen, cold fury rising in his chest. They're not done, Jasmine whispered. Miles nodded slowly. Neither are we. This wasn't just about Grindhouse anymore. This was about justice itself. And Miles Carter wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. Miles Carter sat in his office, the city lights of Memphis flickering outside the window like tiny warnings. The video of Derek Mathers vandalizing the Union Avenue Grindhouse had gone viral overnight. News outlets ran with the story, not just as an incident of workplace retaliation, but as part of a larger narrative about systemic racism and corruption within corporate America. Jasmine stood by his desk, scrolling through her phone. Social media's on fire. Half the comments are calling you a hero, the other half? She frowned. Well, they're calling you everything from a sellout to a tyrant. Miles sighed. He'd expected nothing less. Exposing a system built on silence was never going to win universal applause. "Any word from the authorities?" he asked. Jasmine nodded. The video gave the police enough to issue a warrant for Derek's arrest, vandalism and harassment. But that's the least of his worries. She placed a thick folder on his desk. The EEOC officially opened an investigation into Derek and every manager tied to his network. Civil rights violations, employment discrimination, wrongful termination, it's a long list. Miles flipped through the pages, the weight of victory sitting uneasily on his shoulders. It was progress, but it didn't feel like enough. "Any backlash at the store level?" he asked. Jasmine grimaced. "A few locations had protesters, people claiming you're pushing some anti-white agenda." Miles's jaw tightened. "Holding people accountable isn't anti-anything, it's pro-decency." He stood, pacing the room. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind, exposing Derek, dismantling his network, launching third-party investigations, and ensuring every wrongfully terminated employee had a path to justice. But the fight had taken its toll. The door to his office opened, and Tasha Reynolds walked in, holding a coffee cup. "I figured you could use this," she said, placing it on his desk with a small smile. "Black, no sugar, strong enough to keep you standing." Miles chuckled, taking the cup. "Thanks, Tasha. How's your first week back?" Tasha had returned to Grindhouse, not as a barista, but as the new general manager of the Union Avenue. "Location. It's different," she admitted. "The staff's a mix of relieved and cautious. The ones who stayed were never part of Derek's mess, but they're nervous. Trust takes time to rebuild." Miles nodded, sipping the coffee. It was hot, bitter, and exactly what he needed. "I get it," he said, "but you're the right person for the job. You stood up when it would have been easier to stay silent. That's leadership." Tasha smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Leadership's messy, Miles. You taught me that." Before he could respond, Jasmine's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, eyes widening. "You're going to want to see this," she said, turning the phone toward him. It was a live news feed. Breaking news. Federal investigators have uncovered widespread corruption within multiple coffee chains, including Grindhouse's competitors. Sources confirm that discriminatory hiring practices, harassment cover-ups, and falsified HR reports extend far beyond one company. Officials are calling this the largest workplace discrimination investigation in recent history. Miles sat down, heavily, the coffee forgotten. "This started as one store," he murmured. "One complaint. Now it's a national investigation." Tasha crossed her arms, watching the screen. "You didn't just expose Grindhouse's problem. You exposed an industry secret. Companies protect abusers because it's easier than fixing the culture. You ripped the bandage off." Jasmine's phone buzzed again, an email from Grindhouse's board of directors. "Mr. Carter, given the positive public response to your reforms and the company's increased transparency, the board unanimously supports your continued leadership and the expansion of your inclusion initiatives across all locations. Please proceed with implementing the next phase of the program." Miles exhaled slowly. For the first time in weeks, it felt like they were winning, but he knew better than to celebrate too soon. "Let's not get comfortable," he said, standing. "Derek might be gone, but the mindset that protected him isn't. We need more than policies, we need culture change." He turned to Tasha. "You ready to lead that charge?" Her smile this time was genuine. "More than ready." As she left the office, Miles stared out the window, the city bustling below. Grindhouse had survived the storm, but the real work was just beginning. This wasn't just about coffee shops or corporate policies. It was about dignity, respect, and the courage to speak up when silence felt safer. Miles picked up his phone and dialed Andre Foster, the disabled teacher who had sparked the entire investigation. "Andre," Miles said when the call connected, "how would you feel about leading a new advisory board? One focused on ensuring accessibility and equity across the company." Andre's laugh was warm despite the hardships he'd faced. "Carter," he said, "I thought you'd never ask." Miles hung up, heart lighter than it had been in weeks. The battle was far from over. But one truth stood clear. The voices they'd tried to silence were now the ones leading the charge, and this time nothing would shut them down. The story of Miles Carter, Tasha Reynolds, Andre Foster, and the toxic culture they exposed is more than just a corporate scandal. It's a stark reminder of what happens when prejudice goes unchecked and how silence allows injustice to thrive. 4. Years Grindhouse operated under the illusion of inclusivity, while discrimination quietly festered beneath the surface. Derek Mathers didn't build his network overnight. It grew because people in power chose comfort over confrontation, ignoring complaints and dismissing victims as overly sensitive. But the moment one person, Miles, decided to stop accepting the status quo, everything changed. His decision to act, despite personal risk, set off a chain reaction. It empowered Tasha to speak up, Andre to fight back, and countless employees to demand better. The lesson here is clear. Ignoring injustice doesn't make it disappear. It allows it to spread, infecting systems and cultures until someone brave. Enough says enough. Accountability starts with awareness, change starts with action, and justice starts when people refuse to let fear silence them. But this story also reveals something deeper. Real leadership isn't about titles or power. It's about protecting those without power. Miles didn't just save his company. He redefined what leadership looks like in the face of adversity. Now the question is, what would you have done in Miles's place? Would you have spoken up, even if it meant risking your career? Comment number 1 if you believe standing up for justice is always worth it, no matter the cost. And if this story moved you, don't let it end here. Like, subscribe, and share to spread the message that silence protects no one, and action, however small, can change lives. Thank you for watching. Stay brave, stay vocal, and remember, the fight for justice doesn't end with one victory. It's an ongoing journey, and every voice matters, including yours. Take care and see you in the next story.